Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Blake Creamer, and in this episode, we are continuing our Players of Interest series where we break down one player from every team. Today, it's the Atlantic Division. These aren't the obvious names here. They're guys with an ADP of 150 or higher who have the underlying numbers and upside to become real difference makers for your fantasy squads. Let's get to biz. Oh, yeah. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It's the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Blake Creamer. I'll be your host. Please give me a follow over on X and Blue Sky at Blake Creamer AG. Give us a follow over on YouTube as well. That'd really help us out. And you're going to want to watch today's episode on YouTube because we have beautiful data vizzes provided by my guest today, the legendary, the one, the only, Louis Boulet of lbhockey.com. My man. Welcome back. We're getting to it here, man. We're going to finish the series. You stoked?
I'm so excited. That may be one of the most hyped up intros I've ever had for me there. Legendary one and only. That's surely going to do nothing to my ego. Not at all. But yeah, no, I'm excited to get back to it. And yeah, as Blake said, tons of data vizzes in this app. So make sure you're tuning in for the visual component.
Yep, you got to get your biscuits over there. I mean, we'll do our best to explain it for the audio listeners. It's going to be good, but you really want the full experience. Get on over to YouTube and check out the vizzes from lb-hockey.com and Louis Boulet. My man, we're getting closer to the start of the season here. Are you getting pumped?
I'm so excited. I think like over the last couple of summers, I've done a pretty good job of getting my hype levels back down for as long as possible. But in the last like week and a half, I've been wrapping up some summer coding and getting into some preseason postings for the LB Hockey socials. I've just been feeling the hype more and more. I've been watching like top 10 like electrifying goals of the last however many years. It's like, I need this back. Like it's a month away. I need it to be October already, man. I do.
I know, buddy. Lots of good reports coming out. We're getting hockey news. It's a good time to be alive, my man. But that's not why we're all here. We're here to talk about these epic players of interest, these deep cuts, these hidden gems. One from each team in the Atlantic Division. Let's get going. Louis, you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. All right. Let's start in Edmonton here. We're talking Edmonton. What am I talking about? No, we're talking about Boston. I'm looking at a picture of Victor Arvidsson in his Edmonton jersey. We're talking about Boston, and we're talking about Victor Arvidsson. See you at the party, Victor. Yeah. There's a bunch of things I like about Victor Arvidsson here, and we didn't really get to see any of them in his time in Edmonton there. I think that people were really excited about the prospect of Arvidsson playing in that top six in Edmonton. But we've seen that story before, right? With guys like Ty Ratty, anybody getting that deployment with Connor McDavid and Leon.
That's a pull. Ty Ratty is a crazy pull.
Oh, absolutely, buddy. I mention him all the time because, remember going into the season, he was actually getting drafted that year in fantasy hockey. But yeah, it's one thing to get to play with these guys. It's another thing to actually succeed while you're doing that, right? And I think that's a hard thing to do. Like McDavid and Draisaitl so elite, and the offense is tailored so specifically for them that I don't think every player can really adjust to that style. And Arvidsson didn't really do that. He played mostly with Draisaitl and Podkolzin, did move up and down the lineup, wasn't really able to build chemistry with anyone, and ended up producing the worst statistical season of his career. He paced for 33 points. Buddy, that's showing no good. But the reason I'm interested in this guy, and I'm interested to hear your take here, Louis, he's a per-minute beast, right? Like, I think the individual shot and chance generation have always been good for Arvidsson. He just wasn't getting the minutes here in Edmonton. Like his numbers, he had 15 minutes average time on ice, down from 1642 the season before, down from 1706 the season prior to that. So, his ice time's going in the wrong direction. I don't like that. But yeah, I think that he has a bit of an opportunity here in the top six in Boston, maybe power play one. Do you like Arvidsson at all this year? And is this a player of interest for you?
So it's hard for me to be unbiased with Arvidsson because he and Kempe essentially, but especially the Arvidsson pickup, when he returned late in 2022-23, won me my or 23-24, sorry, won me my fantasy league. So I will always have a soft spot for him in my heart. But I do like him a lot, even as a player, speaking purely analytically. He's a little ball of fury, a honey badger, as we had on the slide there. One of the best blends of like ferocity despite size and offensive ability in the league. It's a very specific thing, but those kinds of players are always fun to watch out there. He's got an absolute rocket of a shot. We can see and look at the badges there at the bottom of the progression tracker, the 1-2 wonder, slap shot, hot shot, and scoring threat badge. It's just a cannon that he's got in that little frame. And he's really improved his puck retrieval game too. So all of that just makes him just a very furious, ferocious player. And despite the point drop, we can see at the bottom there of the progression tracker, his point pace went from over an 82 game season from 60 to 62, and then skipping to the other full season there, 33. That's a huge drop, but his underlyings were still pretty strong, both as a shooter, passer, and just general on ice contributor. All of those stayed above average and mostly above the three-quarter mark, 75th and plus percentile. Yeah, he won't have Draisaitl as a center anymore, which he did for, at least a fair bit of time. I know he's more anchored to put Colson as a winger pair, but there was still like a good bit of minutes where he played with Dry. But he's solidly entrenched in the top six with power play time now. We'll see if that's PP1. I'm not certain. The only guy I could see him supersede for that spot would be Middlestat, because Geeky has kind of perfectly placed himself as a backboard for Pasternak. But now that he's got a full season under his belt after missing nearly all of 2023-24, he should be good to go this season right off the rip. No more adjustment period, or so you'd think. The thing with Arvidsson, and this is a hiccup I've seen with a lot of players, is that he derives a lot of value from supporting offensively off puck. And that requires, or has shown to be a skill that requires, a very intricate knowledge of your line mates' routes and tendencies. But good for him. He's got a still very strong ability to create for himself and consistency game after game. So even if the off puck game takes some time, those other skills really raise his floor and make him a good option nonetheless.
Yeah, I like that actually. The off puck play is something that is definitely going to suffer when you go to a new team, right? Like all these systems are, they're not reinventing the wheel. Like the systems are fairly easy to kind of get into, but it's more the tendencies of the players you're playing with.
100%. It's more the per player component of it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's an interesting piece there for Arvidsson. So, anytime you're taking a new face in a new place, there is some variance there. I do think he has an outside shot at power play one. Like you said, it's going to be Middlestat potentially. You also have Zaka that has played power play one as well. So I think it's going to be between those three for power play one. I think one of the problems with Arvidsson there is he's a righty, and everyone else on that top unit is right-handed as well. So I don't know. They might want to go that way. It's fine to have that on the power play, right? You can kind of overload one side, and that's fine. But I don't know. Middlestat and Zaka are both left-handed. And Middlestat, obviously, you get some extra face-off support there as well. So we'll see what happens. I think that Arvidsson has the most potential for power play points of the three, though. But I'm never going to forget this season. He had an epic season on power play 2 in LA in 2022-23. He popped for 10 goals, 25 power play points with only a 44% power play share. So it's in the bag for this guy. It's just he needs the opportunity, right? And I'm not exactly sure that it is going to come here, but like you said, this guy's a per-minute beast. I think he's going to get a little bit more deployment here. It's just going to be figuring out how to play with his line mates. But yeah, I think it's absolutely a player of interest. I love the shots, and in category leagues, he'll do that. Like you said, the shots didn't go down. It was just the minutes, right? And I think his minutes are going to go up, so those shots are going to go up. So shout out to Victor Arvidsson. We will see you at the party, Victor Arvidsson. Louis, have you ever seen the movie Total Recall from 1992?
Of course I have.
Dang, buddy. Oh, okay. I know you're a young man. That my partner Nate, who I work with, he hasn't seen a damn thing. Okay, he's probably your age, and yeah, I get nothing from him. I just get blank stares. So, buddy, I appreciate you. Total Recall, one of the best sci-fis of all time.
It's good. I haven't seen it in a while, but the one watch still sticks with me.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate that you gave it the one watch there. All right. Let's move on. Enough of Total Recall here. All right. I've never even been to Mars. It's my Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's just off the cuff. I'm working on it. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for that. We'll edit that out in post, Louis. Don't worry.
Yeah. Good call.
Yep. Sweet. Yeah. Let's move over to Buffalo. The Sabres, the happiest place on earth. And we're talking about Zach the Butler Benson. Yeah. I like this player. I think I've watched some good highlights on Zach Benson. I think there's going to be some good opportunity for him this upcoming year on line one. And that's really kind of what put him on my radar. But then when I started digging in, something that stands out to me when watching Benson play is sort of how he's able to make plays in stride, right? And this is something you put in your notes, like he plays with pace, right? You can tell like the puck's on his stick, off his stick. He's really good with a lot of one-touch passes, really sharp passes, hitting his teammates in stride there with speed and also board battles. Like I watched a big highlight package, and he reminds me a lot of Connor Garland in that way. Like just a smaller guy.
I'm happy you brought up that comparison. Yes.
Yeah, sweet. Okay. Yeah, because it just reminded me of that. Like this guy goes into a board battle and he comes out with the puck, and he's tiny. You know what I mean? He's beating much bigger players to get the puck. And then the other thing is when you have the puck, Benson is the type of player who knows what to do with it. So yeah, I feel like last year he was kind of shuffled up and down the lineup. He did spend time towards the end of the year with Tage and Kulik on line one. Still no power play one time, so that's likely not happening next season, I don't think. But like I said, I do think he's got first crack at line one there with Tage, and I think Josh Norris is going to be the 1C there. And that's a pretty damn nice line. Zach Benson, Josh Norris, and Tage Thompson. Pretty damn good. I don't know. Talk to me about Zach Benson and what your thoughts are on him and what you think he might be able to do next season.
So you've covered him pretty well. I've always been a big Zach Benson guy dating back to his draft year. I guess that's like just 3 seasons ago now. It's not even that long ago, but I don't know. He's felt like a day one to me. Like he was up there with Frank Nazar as one of my favorite prospects I've had the privilege to scout. He's part of that is bias within myself. He played for the Winnipeg Ice. My entire family is from Winnipeg. I've even got, I don't know if I could get it in frame here, but I got my Winnipeg Ice jersey in the back.
I love
it. For that. But yeah, so even on that team as a yet to be drafted 17-year-old for most of that season, he was on a stacked roster with guys like Matthew Savoie, Connor Geekie, Carson Lambos, all first round picks. And even other additions like Zach Ostapchuk came in later. Connor McLennan was the guy who was getting points. He was the best player on that team and led them in points. And we're not talking about best offensively, best overall player. Arguably the smartest player in the draft class, despite that having Connor Bedard, Adam Fantilli, Matvei Michkov, all those guys. And he's just been able to I was worried that he wouldn't get a chance at the NHL level as quickly as he was, but Buffalo proved me wrong there. I'm very happy that he was able to get that. Sure, the first season was production-wise, it was fine, but I think his underlines weren't great. And then the production didn't jump out a ton, but there were massive improvements under the hood. He went from, in terms of forwards league-wide, he went from the 20th to the 68th percentile in our data, which is absolutely massive for an improvement at that age. He remains, as you've said, the perfect blend of like intelligence and just furious pace setting. Like his motor never stops. And there's a big difference between speed and pace, right? You don't need to be super fast. Zach Benson is the guy who's always been like, oh, he's a little small and his stride is good, but not great. He doesn't really have that explosiveness. But because of how fast he plays, he was still able to post phenomenal puck carrying numbers in transition. And again, as a guy who's 5'10", 170 pounds and was 19 years old for the entirety of the regular season last year, he was posting first-line worthy checking metrics. And it's just the way he can melt that forechecking ability and his defensive stick with like a prone mindset and reads of a 35-year-old veteran at such a young age is just baffling, really. And I do think that for the fantasy side of things, the offense will follow fairly soon. He's always had excellent playmaking ability. He deceives the opposition constantly with that. And as you mentioned, I think there should be a big increase in deployment this year. The shooting volume already went up too. It went from like around kind of bad to league average now. And I think it's just all about efficiency moving forward. His finishing ability was the worst grading metric of everything on his profile within our data. And once he gets that figured out, because I feel like he almost certainly will, it'll just be an absolute massive explosion for him on the fantasy side of things.
Yeah, I love to hear that. That's a deep dive that I'm really interested in because, yeah, I know a lot of eye test stuff with Zach Benson. And then when I look at the micro stats, it shows out well, like better than average, but it's not remarkable, right? So there's some intangibles that aren't really captured, at least in the metrics that I'm looking at. So I'd love to hear that about Zach Benson because it is a player I'm excited about. And like you said, the efficiency, right? He was really inefficient last year. I mean, his shooting percentage went down from 11.2 to 8.3. So yeah, he's shooting a little bit more, scoring a little bit less. I think that's going to normalize to some degree, especially if he's able to stick on line one there with big Tage Thompson. I think Tage is going to have a monstrous season here. So I like anybody who's attached to him, and this guy's no slouch. So I'm a big fan of the player. I don't know if we're drafting him yet. His ADP, he's not even being drafted on Yahoo right now. Our projection for him, I forgot to mention my projection for Arvidsson, so I'll give that in a second. But projection for Benson, 15 goals, 22 assists, 37 points, with 5 points on the power play. Negligible per riffs. He doesn't do that, right? But I don't know. What do you think about 37 points for Zach Benson? You think that's reasonable?
I think so. I think it's very much the type of player similarly to, not in playing style, but in terms of their development throughout the season, like Shane Wright last year, who started off, I think he may have even started in the A, but got to a point where over a 41-game stretch later on in the season, he was on a 70-point pace over a full season. I think that's the kind of potential and elevation you could see from Benson as the season goes on. Sure, he might be good from the get-go, but he could be great to like first-line level production output by the last 25 games of the season.
I love that. Oh man, Zach the Butler Benson, we salute you, my man. All right, let's move on. We got to talk about the Detroit Red Wings and an absolute beefcake on the back end. Simon Edmondson. This is a player for sure with some obvious physical advantages. I mean, he's like 6'6", like what is he, 209 or something? Yeah.
Just the whiplash from going from Benson to him is crazy.
Yeah. I can just picture Benson like on Edmondson's shoulders, you know what I mean? And they're just skating around, and Benson has that little hat on with the propeller. Are you getting the visual I'm putting down here?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Shout out to Zach Benson. That's fine. Edmondson, a player I was digging in on here, very good defensively, obviously for the Wings. He fills a role there. He was able to deny zone entries and entries with possession at a fairly high rate, according to all three zones microstats data. He did split time with Mo Seider and Albert Johansson last season. And I think, if he's playing with Seider, that means he's playing some of the toughest minutes in the entire league, right? Because that's what Seider does. He's out there against all the top opposing forwards, right? And he's having a super time doing it. So the thing with Edmondson, I'm having a hard time seeing how he breaks through offensively at this point in his career, just in this point in his development, right? Not that he can't get there, but just due to some of the underlying metrics up to this point. That said, too, I think Detroit, they don't have a lot of offensive options on the back end, right? I think they're sort of trying to make Mo Seider that guy, and he's not exactly that player either, right? I think he gets there with good power play numbers. But talk to me about Edmondson. Like, this is a guy that's going to play, pretty big minutes. He played just over 21 minutes average time on ice. I could see that going up next year. He's an underrated goal scorer, like 7 goals for a D-man like this. I think that's really nice. Maybe he has double-digit goal potential. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, this was a guy, like, we floated the idea of Marco Kasper in the slot, right? And not to say that players like Kasper are a dime a dozen. Like, Kasper is great. He's going to continue developing, and I'd say he's even one of the best options on breakouts, for example, for Detroit amongst forwards. But the thing for me is that a D-man like Edmondson with the points potential, he's 22 years old. He's already hit 30-plus points in a season. He's got the peripheral help from his physical build, and the environment is really what intrigues me, because he is on, we can all agree, a pretty awful defensive core on Detroit. Outside of Seider, there's really not much else there. We got Ben Sherrod on the first pair projected right now. Like, what are we even doing here? And as much as I love Jacob Bernard-Docker, I don't know that him being an important piece in your bottom four is important. And Travis Hamonic too, FYI, Sens legend. But the point is,
Canucks legend too.
Yeah, there you go. But Edmondson just has the space to really entrench himself as a heavily relied upon defenseman. And that's really what intrigues me, because a big part of fantasy hockey that I don't think we talk about enough is value relative to position. And this is where defensemen start to shine a lot. And one thing I've put a lot of emphasis on in my drafts over the last few years and my keepers and keeper leagues. But yeah, so his playing style, he's very physically involved. He's a two-way piece who thrives while defending the rush. And that rush defense ability is mirrored at the team level for Detroit. We can see the Detroit's team card here for the 2024-25 season, kind of the blueprint of how they drove results both with and without the puck. And pretty much the best of their defensive metrics is rush defense, and it's not even close. And I think that Simon Edvinsson, who grades out as their best rush defender, even slightly ahead of Mo Seider. Sure, Seider's the better D-man overall, but Edvinsson specifically at that skill has helped a lot. And I think that will really ease his trajectory towards being elevated in the lineup. Plus, just being that type of player, it's a pathway to high block shots, pretty good amount of hit counts too. And he's already even started using that athletic build and general toolkit to help offensively in transition, along with absorbing contact all over the ice. So now, to me, I think it's more a question of using it within the O-zone more, whether that's more frequently through activations lower towards the circles or by inviting opponents to challenge him more, because he's got the build and just the general ability to shoulder that off and then pass it off to someone who's now open thanks to the guy coming in being forced to attack him. And that, I think it's less of an when and more of an if he can figure that out. His biggest thing to elevating into like a solid fantasy contributor is improving his role within Detroit's offense, and that would do wonders for it.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I like what you said about sort of his defensive play, and that's going to keep his floor solid anyway, just because he's going to be out there on the ice. He's going to be trusted to be out there. I mean, the perif numbers were pretty good last year. He's not hurting you at hits, like 86 hits in 78 games. He had 144 blocks. So definitely block party over here. That's, probably going to get even more if he gets more ice time, which I think we can expect him to do that. It's just, I'm interested in the player for sure, but I also like looking into this player and what he was able to do, previous to the NHL. Like, it's not like he was an elite offensive producer in the AHL really, or any other point in his development. He sort of profiles to me as like, maybe another player like we're going to talk about here soon with the Sens and Thomas Chabot. Like, do you think there's any kind of comparisons between Simon Edvinsson and Thomas Chabot, or is Chabot more kind of an offensive driver, whereas Edvinsson is kind of that defensive presence?
Yeah, I'd say Chabot is definitely more of that offensive stallion. Like, Edvinsson doesn't have the puck movement ability, and he's a good skater, but Chabot's skating, my God, is something else. And the way he uses that offensively, you're right. It's just, to me, the fact that he was able to put up the numbers that he was able to points-wise at such a young age on a team like Detroit is really enticing. It's not a player that I'm going to be drafting, but it's definitely a guy I'm keeping an eye on, because you always need an extra defenseman in these types of leagues. And of anyone who could provide a good level of upside to shockingly be like, oh my God, this guy turns into someone I'm keeping on my team throughout the year, this is one of the best options for me, because he provides not just potential offensively, but a known foundation of peripherals too.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. And you're getting the insurance in case Mo Seider gets injured, right? I think they would probably go Edvinsson on power play one there. I mean, that makes sense. Yeah. I think we've still got Eric Gustafsson in the mix, but they didn't really, I don't know. That's nothing I'm ever going to be excited about. So, no, this is an interesting player. And I think he will spend some time on our fantasy rosters this season, certainly as a streamer, right? In category leagues, definitely, because of he'll be out on the ice. So nice looking player, really good get for Detroit, and we'll see how he develops. I think that's absolutely a player of interest. Let's move on to the Florida Panthers. We got to talk about Mackie Samoskevich, one of the best names in the entire league. That's awesome. Your last name is Samoskevich. What are you going to name your kid? Mackie. All right. Just put it together. I mean, dang, his parents are elite with their name creativity. I spent way too long talking about that. All right.
It's okay. Listen, I'm the one who has an Angus Crookshank jersey right behind me right now, so I'm with you.
Yeah, another epic name, Angus Crookshank. I think we talked about him last time we were on, and we should honestly talk about him again because he's great. All right. And his name is epic. Anyways, we're talking about Mackie Samoskevich here. This is a player I was ready to get all in on. You know what I mean? I was pretty excited about him because of what he was able to do towards the end of last season. And then, obviously Florida picked up Brad Marchand, right? And that kind of nuked Samoskevich's value. And then he went from, playing over 16 minutes average time on ice in the last quarter of the season and power play 1 to getting healthy scratched in the playoffs. And then when he was in the lineup, it was like an 11-minute treatment. So he definitely moved down the lineup once they were kind of prepared for the playoffs. And now they signed Marchand again, Bennett, Ekblad to long-term contracts. So I probably would have been a little bit more out on Samoskevich this year if it wasn't for the fact that Matt Tkachuk is injured. All right. And he's going to be injured probably until the new year. Right. So I think that Samoskevich is going to get a chance to run it back. Good chance that he sees line 2 deployment for me with Sam Bennett and Erod, Evan Rodriguez, and a small C chance he gets back on the top power play there in Florida. And I think, it just depends on what Maurice wants to do. And that would also mean, too, if Sam Miskevich is on power play 1, that means Marchand, Bennett, and Verhaeghe are on power play 2, right? Which is, when you say it out loud, it's like, what? No, that doesn't make sense. But they did that, right? They had Verhaeghe on power play 2, when Sam Miskevich was up on power play 1. So they obviously like what he's kind of bringing to the table here. Under the hood, I mean, I'd love to get your take on this too, because I think we're looking at a pretty elite chance generator in his limited minutes. He's a great forechecker. I just think this is a guy that can do something for fantasy and could be a nice swing late in your drafts. Like, talk to me about Mackie Samoskevich.
Yeah, I'd say probably one of the players who made the biggest jump onto my fantasy radar for this year relative to where he was at the start of last season. Here we have the multi-year cards for LB Hockey. So this, for him, it's just last year, but usually it's the last 3 years weighted. He's got a thing where if you look at the biggest pros on his card, that would be his zone offense and his checking ability. Those are all reflected in fantasy, whereas the biggest minuses, zone defense and some play in transition, not reflected. He's built as the perfect kind of player, similar to, like, I think we talked about Alex Tuck in the past or something, but this is the type of player where he's kind of built for this specific situation. He's already very smart at identifying the strengths within his game and using them often. Like, having that refined of a checking game at just 22 years old, along with promising offense, he's not just a one-trick pony, is very impressive. And as we can see, he's got the wrecking ball badge there, and he's a very high-frequency shooter, which just makes him that perfect fantasy power forward. Sure, there are efficiency issues where he needs to nail down his shot selection. That was probably the biggest problem I had with him. Yes, it means you get good numbers from a fantasy point of view, but it also means you're potentially losing the puck more than you should and not getting, goals or getting good chances that you end up getting goals or assists for. And I think he needs to nail that down, along with maybe some finishing from range as well. But I think if he just shoots a little bit less from further away, the effect of that will get dialed back, the shooting selection will be fixed, and he'll be better off moving forward. I do think that, ironically enough, Sam Bennett is pretty much the perfect role model for him, and that's likely going to be a center for at least half the year, and that's really going to help him mold his power forward game. As you mentioned, even if he plays on PP2 once Tkachuk comes back, that still means playing with Brad Marchand, Sam Bennett, Carter Verhaeghe, and Gustav Forsling. That's an unbelievable second unit. That would be better than some first units out there, and probably most. But yeah, like, I'm really excited to see what he does. He was identified by our model as one of the players most likely to break out offensively next season, hence the bronze breakout candidate badge there. And just generally was an excellent fill-in in 2024-25, and barely played in the playoffs. But now that Tkachuk is out, he should have time to fully integrate himself in Florida's second line, and is definitely a player of interest for me moving forward.
Yeah, I think this is a guy potentially draftable. I mean, with your last pick or something like that at the end of the draft. But we'll have to see what happens in training camp here. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him on power play 1. They did it before, and they have, Maurice has no problem putting his top players on power play 2. It's just something that he's done here. And obviously Florida plays to an identity, and everybody's bought in, right? Brad Marchand is a great example of that, playing on the third line and power play 2 in the playoffs, right? Like, that's a top line, top power play guy for his entire career. And he just comes into Florida and does that. So these guys all play to identity. They all have a place in that system. And I'm hoping that Mackie Samoskevich gets a little bit of run here, especially at the start of the season. The projection we had for him, his ADP, first off, non-existent. He's not getting drafted on Yahoo right now. Projection we have here at Apples and Ginos: 18 goals, 23 assists, 41 points, including 137 hits there, with just over 14 minutes average time on ice. I don't know. What do you think about that, Louis?
I think that's a pretty good projection. It's not like he doesn't have a high level of point production at previous levels. I think he was over a point per game in his final year in the NCAA, and he wasn't even that old back then too. I think he would have been 20 years old when that happened. There is evidence there to suggest that he could really blow up offensively. And as we mentioned with Edvinsson, this is a guy who has potential to become someone who stays on your team. Sure, there's players that could probably provide a more secure floor, especially once Tkachuk comes back. He might be relegated. But you want to talk about big swings that could absolutely work out. This is one of those guys.
There you go. You heard it here first, folks. Mackie Samoskevich to the moon. we're getting there. All right. We're getting there with Mackie Samoskevich. Another player similar to Mackie Samoskevich, actually, when I was digging in. St. Louis Blues. No, not St. Louis Blues. Montreal Canadiens, Zach Bolduc. I'm just looking at the jersey. These are new faces, new places.
Oh, get ready for the Matthias Pacelli section then.
Oh, yeah. That's fine. I'll just continue on just to keep it consistent. But yeah, Zach Bolduc in Montreal. I think this is a very interesting player. And I still don't quite understand what the Blues were doing, moving this player here to like. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, why?
I don't get it. I don't understand. It was a pretty. I don't know. I don't see the potential like success there from the Blues side of things. That's pretty much all I have.
Yeah, I mean, like, is Logan Mailloux, like, is he such a hot prospect? Like, I know he's 31st overall. That's fine. Like, good right shooting defenseman here. But yeah, I don't get it. I don't know. It seemed like Bolduc is a guy on the rise, whereas Mailloux is not even anywhere close to the development stage that Bolduc is in, who can actually do something for fantasy. So, and I'm not sure his ceiling is as high either. But anyways, Zach Bolduc,
and the defense is really bad. Like, it's really bad.
Yeah, so it's kind of like taking more of a sure thing or closer to a sure thing just for a lottery ticket. You know, I didn't understand the move, but yeah, Bolduc. Like, he was cooking with the Blues at the end of last year. Guy was getting power play 1, had 14 points in the last 19 games. Really nice end to the season. I think has an underrated defensive presence as well. Seemed like this guy was always, back to support the D-man, help break the puck out of the zone, connect players together. I looked at his zone entries as well. They look solid. To me, it's a player on the rise that was, getting a bit of opportunity towards the end of the season. Now that he's on Montreal, I feel like it's a little bit of a lateral move, right? With the potential to maybe stall his upswing, right? Because of those things we mentioned there with Arvidsson, right? It's like, he's got to figure out all the, his new line mates, and does he get a consistent line right off the bat, or is he kind of shuffled around while they try and figure things out, right? I think just a lot of variance there. So, we might not see a continuation of his production there. Also, is he going to get top 6 minutes here in Montreal? Like, it's possible. But I think he has to compete with Patrick Laine, right? Or Oliver Kapanen, right? Those are guys that are kind of vying for the same spot. And also Bolduc, I don't think he has a real shot at power play 1 here in Montreal unless there's someone who gets injured. So I don't know. Zach Bolduc, what do you think his outlook is like here for Montreal? And do you think he's going to get that opportunity that's going to help him be fantasy relevant?
Yeah, and he's a player that I really started liking a lot by the end of the year. As we said, very sneaky acquisition by Montreal. He doesn't necessarily lack skill, but he's very much more of a great middle six two-way forward support piece, which for a team that has a lot of up and coming young dynamic players, that fits perfectly, right? And I do think there's a good chance he plays second line. I probably would see them putting aside any potential injuries. I would see them probably put him on a line with maybe Doc and Demidov or something, and you run Newhook Line A with Line A PP1. But yeah, he's another guy that took a big jump from his rookie year to his sophomore year. I think it was around 29th percentile to 61st amongst forwards last year, which is a very huge jump for a guy at that age. And that's thanks to improvements all over the ice. As you mentioned, the defensive side, I don't think he's just underrated. I think he's become one of the league's most reliable young wingers, in terms of suppressing chances. And even with the puck on the breakout, he rarely turns it over. And all over the ice, he now uses his whole body to apply pressure very often rather than sticking to more sporadic pokes, and willingly going to those dirty areas to apply pressure more than just rather hoping to get lost in coverage and be found by their teammates. And that is one thing that I think differentiates him from Arvidsson in that sense, as you mentioned, because he's a way more active player now after his sophomore campaign and consistently gets involved. Not that Arvidsson doesn't, but Arvidsson, a bigger component of his offense is being placed off puck, whereas now Bolduc is learning to create a lot more, right. And that's going to help him a lot integrate himself faster. I do think for the fantasy side of things, he's turned into a legitimate scoring threat with the puck. That's both thanks to the creation and a big jump in his finishing ability. We'll see, where the shooting percentage ends up. If it regresses or stays next season, that could be a question of playmaking and setting ability from his line mates, which if he plays with a guy like Demidov, that could be magic, right? That's someone who can find you, with a perfect pass from anywhere. And looking at the dashboard we have here, I've always loved Will Carrier as a close to ideal support piece for your third line. the thing is he never really reached that offensive level, right? He does everything right, except he's not an offensive guy.
Yeah, can't finish.
And exactly. And I think Boulet profiles very similarly in playing style, but has a much clearer pathway and, has already exceeded well and above, but to being a significant offensive producer in comparison. And that's what I think makes him so interesting, is that there's not a lot of young players like him. Benson is close in that sense, but those are two guys that really fascinate me because they're so young. They've already got good production. And the other areas of the game that we're not even talking about in terms of points are already so refined. It's really interesting to see kind of this new wave of players like this, to see the Zach B's of their draft do as well as they've done.
Go get yourself a Zach B in your fantasy drafts. You're going to like the way you feel, I guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I love that, man. That's excellent stuff on Bolduc there. It's just, I was interested in him last year, and the thought of him with Demidov, that is pretty exciting. And I'm kind of a Kirby Doc truther. I don't know. Like, I know he hasn't, reached potential, even close, right? Or been able to stay healthy in any capacity. But he had a stretch there with Montreal where he was getting 20 minutes and he was doing something with it, right? Not just offensively, but, he was all over the ice. He was making a difference in a positive way for the team. And I do think that player's still there. So I hope that Kirby Doc is fully healthy going into the season, because I do think that he's a low end 2C, but he's still a 2C, right? And you're playing with Demidov and Zach Bolduc. Like, that's a nice spot to be. That's an exciting young line that I think can actually do something for fantasy. So shout out to Zach Bolduc. He's also a beefer as well. He's not going to hurt you with his periph, so you get lots of hits there. His ADP on Yahoo, he's not getting drafted. Our A&G projection for Bolduc: 23 goals, 17 assists, 40 points. That includes 132 hits in just 14 and a half minutes average time on ice. You think he can get to 40?
I think so. Yeah. Like, despite, they're probably going to be like, some time to get used to the new team. It's a good environment for him. He should fit in very well with his play style. It'll earn him minutes. It'll get the trust of the coaching staff in no time. Then it'll get rolling. Yeah, I think.
Absolutely, buddy. Sounds good. All right, let's move on to Canada's team. All right, it's the Ottawa Senators.
Yes,
Louis'
sir.
favorite team. He's stoked, and I'm stoked to hear about it too. We've got a really good player here, Thomas Chabot. And I'm excited to hear your take, because obviously you watch this player quite a bit. To me, Chabot is like definition of underrated, right? In fantasy circles, in real life, it's not a player you're talking about unless you watch the team a lot, right? And like yourself, that this guy's not underrated. He's like really valuable for this team. And I feel like Chabot is kind of in that tier of D-men, like guys like Devin Taves or Miro Heiskanen or Vince Dunn, that don't really get the accolades, at least offensively, as some of their, defensive counterparts there, but they don't exactly need power play one to be fantasy relevant. And I think Chabot's, in that kind of tier for me. The underlying metrics look amazing for Chabot, right? Individual chance and shot metrics, really solid. Micro stats are insane, right? When it comes to offensive contributions, he's in like the 96th percentile in chance contributions per 60, 95th percentile shot contributions, 96th percentile in rush offense. He does that. He's a beast.
He's unreal, man.
Yeah. So to me, it's really just a lack of power play time that caps his ceiling for fantasy, but he is the next man up. If Jake Sanderson does get injured, talk to me about Thomas Chabot. And I'd also love to get a quick take on Jake Sanderson too, because they're both players of interest that are, that people are having to make decisions when it comes to those players where they're available in the draft. So talk to me about Chabot and then a little bit about Sanderson, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, I'm so excited for this. Finally, it's the Sens part of this series. Chabot, simply put, absolute workhorse. Like, there was arguably no D-man that was put in a worse position and relied upon more than Thomas Chabot from 2019 to 2023. Dude had to go through the trenches getting 26 plus minute nights, almost 30 every once in a while being partnered with like Nikita Zaitsev or Josh Brown or Travis Hamonic at some point. Hockey players that played in the NHL, but Chabot deserved better. And now that he, doesn't have this, he's really been able to unlock. I mean, he's always had good underlying metrics, but now that he's no longer the primary focus and Sanderson is there to insulate him, he's really shining. Like, yes, he's always been a very skilled puck mover who has driven strong offensive results thanks to his ability to create for others, as you said. His skating is so damn smooth. And honestly, he's got a laser beam of a wrist shot. He doesn't use a clapper very often, but when he steps in from just below the blue line and goes into the high slot for a wrister, it's just so clean, so crisp. And yeah, the puck moving is still his bread and butter for sure, though. Like, there's few defensemen that have as much ability to dictate how their team's offense unfolds when they're on the ice. And just his ability to facilitate ozone possessions into shots is just really marveling to watch. He actually ranked as the most important skater to their team's offense in 21-22 in our model, and the most influential puck-moving defenseman this past season in our model. So the fact that he's doing this without, getting first pair minutes, arguably, is very impressive. As we mentioned, now he's got a proper partner, but that could go either way. We don't really know exactly what's going to happen. Sure, Sanderson and Zub played the entirety of their season together last year when they were healthy. But I do think that Chabot has, he's got a full stable of right-handed partners at the ready. I think Zub would make for the ideal guy, as he covers kind of all the shutdown aspects, as we can see in the line compatibility lab there. Zub's got like the bottom half of the circle covered, and then all the with puck attributes: shooting, passing, generation, transition, attack, and breakout. Chabot's got covered. Not just covered, but like, near top of the league level. And there's a chance he ends up still with Jensen. But I think, him getting old and getting a little bit of time recovering from a big injury is going to hurt. But this is where the Spence edition comes in, and I think helps a lot, because he's a guy who, despite being a little small, has shown to be really good at defending both in the zone and on the cycle. And that's the one area of Chabot's game that I think needs most help. He's a good skater, don't get me wrong, but the ability to defend the rush has always been a little tough, and that got exposed against the Leafs in the first round last year with that pair of him and Jensen. So, he's finally got a clean bill of health, and he's got help. So, like, ignore him at your own peril, right? But yeah, sorry, Sanderson, I almost forgot about that. I can yap about the Sens forever, but I do think the difference between them is interesting. Within the fan base, there's some people, like, I'd say it's almost split to say who they would rather have on the first power play. I know Sanderson's production was very good there, but Chabot's offensive abilities would make him the favorite, as some people would argue in the fan base. And I'm kind of split. It's been so long since the season at this point that my opinion is kind of mellowed on the matter, and I don't really know where I'd stand there. But I do think Sanderson is due for a more of an even strength breakout offensively. The guy's just got so much. He does everything. Like, it's hard to find any flaws in his game. I don't think there's any sort of drawback in drafting him, just with the skating ability, the puck movement. Even if he's not creating all the time, he's doing so much that he will get you points through exposure.
Right.
And that's enough.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, Sanderson's, his ADP on Yahoo 67, but Thomas Chabot is like 147. So he's not quite at 150 there, like we said, but 147, that's still, from what you described and what I've seen out there on the ice and experienced a little bit by rostering this guy in some of my fantasy squads, like, that's a value. That's an absolute value there for Thomas Chabot. Like, I just feel like last season's numbers, what he was able to do, that's pretty much a lock to me if he's healthy, right? We got 45 games, good goal scoring from the back end, double-digit goal potential as well. If he did see power play one for an extended period of time, now we're looking at a 50 to 55 point D-man at pick 147 in your drafts. And he's probably going later than that in some spots. Like, I don't see a lot of people rushing out to get Thomas Chabot, but based on what you just said, what I've seen with my own eyes, like, this is absolutely a player of interest, and you should be drafting with confidence and also at value, right? Because this is a guy that can absolutely raise the floor of your team as long as he is able to stay healthy. So, I'm a big fan of Thomas Chabot. I love players that just eat a boatload of minutes, right? Like, Chabot, like 4 years ago when he was getting like 26-minute treatment for season after season. It
was crazy, man.
Yeah.
It was insane. The thing is, I'm in, like, being here in Ottawa, my main fantasy league, I can almost never get to draft Sens players because they go so high. Yeah. So I don't really have the benefit of, like, Chabot's a keeper in our league. Like, one of our friends,
I love that.
Like, all of our keepers are Sens players, so I could never get to have the privilege to have them on my team. But yeah,
I'm the exact same way, but with Vancouver, like, people are just going nuclear, picking these guys up way above their ADP. It's like
Connor Garland, first round, lock it in, baby. Let's go.
You know what? That's absolutely worth it. I'll tell you that right now. All right, the man's a little spark plug, little fire hydrant, but he's no Thomas Chabot. Let's agree on that. All right. That's enough sense talk. Thank you, Louis. Appreciate that. Let's move over to Tampa Bay, and we're looking at the Jerk Store, Oliver Bjorkstrand. All right, he's our player of interest for Tampa Bay. I think with Bjorkstrand, it's a player I've been interested in for a lot of years, like ever since he kind of popped off in Columbus there, those 2 seasons. We've seen proof of concept before with him. This guy's he chucks pucks, right? He chucks pucks with the best of them. He can be an efficient power play performer, but I think throughout his career, he sort of struggled to find a consistent role in lineups. And then when he does find a consistent role, the team's not very good, right? Like the supporting cast isn't very good around him. So it's kind of like, that's a stark difference to what he's dealing with here now in Tampa Bay. Like he's going to a wagon of a team with true superstars there. And I think that, it sounds good in theory to me, but he's going from being like a bigger fish in a smaller pond in Seattle to now having to try to supplement the actual superstars here in Tampa. And yeah, it wasn't a great first showing, I think. Before he got injured last year, like they had him on the third line. He was getting some power play one time, but I don't know. I do think there's some reason for hope, but it's all about the deployment with Bjorkstrand. I think he was playing third line there with Yanni Gordon, Nick Paul last year, and that ain't going to cut it. All right. Not for fantasy, but this guy, he's a shot monster. He can be, right. I think I'd love to see him play with Hagel and Cirelli. I think that you get a guy who's going to be at the end of passes here. He's no slouch with zone entries either. So I think he would actually really fit in there. Cirelli with the defensive prowess. And then you got Hagel sort of as that puck hound. And then you got Bjorkstrand at the end of passes. That sounds good to me. Right. And then does he get power play 1? Like that's not a crazy thing to think. John Cooper had Brandon Hagel on power play 2 for a lot of last year. Hagel's not a guy that needs power play 1. He might not even be a good fit for power play 1. Is Bjorkstrand a better fit? Maybe. I don't know. Do you see maybe a better showing this upcoming season with the full training camp in Tampa and maybe a more secured role?
I think so. Bjorkstrand is just such a unique player to me. Like he's so well-rounded and has a good just overall talent level for everything that he does, but he's just short of that echelon that would make him a much more popular player league-wide. So I found that he just often gets forgotten about. And whether that's from, the public fans or even management or coaching staffs, he's a guy that I think should have much more respect. Like when you look at what Columbus traded him for back in the day at Seattle, it was like peanuts. And this was him coming off like a 50, 60 point season while legitimately being a top end defensive and checking forward. It's just the guy does everything, and yet we rarely hear about him, right? So yeah, that mix of refined skills really allows him to get a lot of first line worthy almost performances throughout the season. Like here we have his consistency spread. So the amount of the volume of games. So on the x-axis, we have, how good the games were, and then on the vertical, how often they happened. And we can see on the right, there's a huge spike of, 80th percentile or better games from Bjorkstrand. And this is just the season 2024-25, but if you look back at all the seasons we have in our data set dating back until 2020, he's always been able to generate like a fairly good ratio of all his games being in that elite echelon. So it's really interesting to see if that's happened over the last 5 years. Now with an even better cast, you'd think it'll keep happening, even if he only gets like third line minutes every once in a while. But that brings us to the line permutations, as you said. Like Tampa Bay's offense is so interesting to me, because he could join Hagel and Cirelli for like a shutdown yet very productive L2, but that would be good enough to profile as a first line almost anywhere else, let's be honest. Like Brandon Hagel grades out in the top 20 of my model. He's an unbelievable player. Anthony Cirelli is just the perfect top-notch second line center who does everything defensively and still chips in on offense. And here, he wouldn't be relied upon as much, but Bjorkstrand, I think, would just get a lot of offense through exposure, right? As we said with Sanderson. And even if he goes to the third line there with some mix of hopefully, I know you mentioned Nick Paul and Yanni Gord, they can still do a little bit of stuff, but here now he might have the help of a more developed Connor Geekie for a well-rounded third line that can provide a good bit of offense. And there, Bjorkstrand, his offensive side is called upon further. So rather than getting it through exposure there, it's the offense is more through reliance in this case, right? So, either way that goes, he truly is like a Swiss Army knife type of player. And I'm really excited to see how the Lightning utilize him.
Yeah, it just sounds good. Like, you go from Seattle to Tampa, right? Like, and you got a guy that is an offensive player, in my opinion. Oliver Bjorkstrand is a sniper, right? I think he profiles as a sniper, at least he has in the past, right? He's probably had to adapt his game, but yeah, I think what you said is absolutely true. Like, this is a guy that we're not talking about enough, and I think it's partly due to just the teams he's played on, right? Played on a really
Columbus,
bad Columbus
Seattle,
team,
yeah.
and then Seattle. My God, like. I love Seattle in terms of like their branding and like, I like some of the players and stuff. Like it's fun, but like, it's not fun hockey to watch. And like, they don't have anyone close to a superstar. So it's kind of just this workmanlike effort. It reminds me of like the 1995 New Jersey Devils or something like that. It's just like, they're just doing what they need to try and win games where it doesn't always equal the best hockey, but yeah, the thing with Bjorkstrand too, I don't think he's really ever going to get that, kind of top line deployment that I think he could actually do something with, you know what I mean? Like even just the 17 to 18 to 19 minute treatment. If Bjorkstrand ever got that, I think we're looking at maybe a 65 to 75 point player, maybe 70 points. But I don't think that's going to happen here in Tampa, obviously, because of the way their roster is constructed. But still, can he get on the power play? Can he get with that line too? I think those are all really good questions. And if he does, I think he could probably, come close to his career high, which was 2 years ago in Seattle, 59 points. Pretty damn nice. Yeah.
Well, who are the other options there, like on the second line? Like when I'm looking at daily faceoff, I know like there's a chance that Connor Geekie gets moved up, but currently they have Gage Gonsalves as the right wing on second line, which
I don't get.
Why would you not just put Bjorkstrand there instead, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they have a plan there. Like they could have put him there last year too, and they elected not to in a lot of cases. So
that's true.
There's a reason. I'm not really understanding it at this point, but I do like Connor Geekie though. I'm glad you brought him up. That's another player of interest for me. Just
another Winnipeg Ice legend.
Oh, sweet. Well, there you go. Yeah, absolute beefer too. I like that. But it's hard on these teams like Tampa or New York or just these really top heavy teams for guys like Bjorkstrand when they come here to get opportunity, right? Or for young players like Connor Geekie to get opportunity. They're kind of going to be toiling away on that third line, trying to win their minutes. Maybe there's injuries and they get moved up the lineup, but I do think Bjorkstrand has a little bit of a pathway to minutes. But yeah, Gage Gonsalves, no. That makes no sense. Please, like, get that guy, like, just win your minutes, Gage Gonsalves, on the third line or fourth line, and that's fine. We need Bjorkstrand up, getting some offensive opportunity, and I think we're looking at a player that can do something. So
what I'm hearing is Zemgus Girgenssen's second line right wing. Let's get it done.
Oh yeah, but Zemgus Girgensson, I love that. I've talked about that player before just because the name is so epic.
The Latvian locomotive, man. He's unreal.
That sounds incredible. That's an amazing nickname too. Damn, I wasn't even aware of that. I love Zemgus. You have a choice. Oh, look at our beautiful baby boy. You know what? Zemgus. You're like, yeah.
And he will be an perfect NHL All-Star. Like, great.
Yeah,
good
exactly.
Stuff.
Yeah, makes total sense to me. Bjorkstrand, he's not getting drafted. His ADP on Yahoo, non-existent. We've got him projected for 22 goals, 23 assists, 45 points, including 12 points on the power play. Just over 50 minutes average time on ice. Does that sound about right to you, Louis?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like, I could definitely see him hit 50. I wonder if, last season, him getting the third line was more of a trial run because he just came in and they didn't want to mess with chemistry or stuff. So I could definitely see him, now that they trust him more, put him on the second line right away and show his value there. And in that case, he's hitting 50. As long as there's no big injuries, I could definitely see that. Because if he was able to get almost 60, or at least a 60 almost point pace with those Seattle and Columbus teams, 50 to 60 should be hittable for sure.
Yeah, no, I like that. That makes some sense to me as well. All right, let's move on to the last player here. Utah Hockey Club legend, Matias Maccelli, now playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yeah, I'm low-key kind of into Maccelli this year for fantasy, like draftable potentially. I think that, Nate and I have talked about him a little bit as like a poor man's Marner replacement. And, we've gotten dragged a little bit for that. People are like, what are you talking about? It's like, we're not saying he's Marner. All right. Obviously, like it's not even close, but I do think that there's some similarities there in the way that they sort of facilitate offense, right? And at the very least, like this is a really low risk move for Brad Treliving and the Leafs. I think that when you dig in on the microstats with Maccelli, pretty damn nice, right? You can see even in a down season in Utah, this guy still popped off for shot assists per 60, like really high percentile there, chance assists as well, and zone entries, right? He's great off the rush. Obviously, Utah as a team was really great off the rush last year, but Maccelli is right in the mix there. What happened was he sort of just got edged out by some of the young talent there, guys like Dylan Gunther, Logan Cooley getting a bunch more playing time. Maccelli was relegated to the third line, and yeah, his production suffered for it, but I don't know. I think we've seen what can happen if he's prioritized a little. Like this guy got 57 points in 82 games just one season ago, right? So I don't know. I think you sign a player like Matias Maccelli because you want to put him in an offensive role. He's a great distributor, and he's never played with anyone the level of Austin Matthews or even John Tavares or Willie Nylander. And I think that he's earmarked for the top 6 here. He's not getting power play time, but the even strength time might be enough for Maccelli. And I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. And if you think that's how they're going to utilize him.
Yeah, he remains like just an absolutely pristine, pure passer. Like this is exactly the kind of guy you would label. He'd be one of the first guys you'd label as a playmaker. If you're going through like NHL 25 or 26 or whatever, and you're putting down play styles on creative player, this is the most easy slam dunk you'll ever see. Like truly, whether it's creating chances for his teammates on cycles, as you mentioned, his shot assist rate was incredibly high, or stretching the D with feeds on entries, or even launching passes on the breakout. Like, and with all of that, even ignoring the shooting side, that's another guy that our model identified as one of the most likely to see a big jump in production. And then you combine that with a potentially better scoring environment and deployment in Toronto. Like now maybe more time with high level shooters like Matthews, Nyes, Tavares, even if it's just one of those guys, it's way better than what he had last year. Last year, his most common line was with Nick Bjugstad and Lawson Krause, which like are fine third line players, but that's not where you're going to get the most value squeezed out of a guy like Maccelli, right? And putting all that together, he potentially one of the best cheap options to fill in Marner's playmaking void. I know you're trying to recreate, Marner in the aggregate, so to speak, by adding him and Nick Roy. And there's another guy that they added that I can't remember, but it's the Leafs, so I won't.
Dakota Joshua.
That's who it was.
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
I know. Oh, of course. Yeah. But, those are all guys that bring a good bit of value, but Maccelli really has that passing ability condensed there, and hopefully you're hoping to get some of that back. And the good thing for him is he should likely end up helping in more than just passing. Despite the production drop last year, he is, continued to be a consistently above average chance suppressor. And he brought up his checking game from being, bottom of the barrel league wide to at least being just fine. Don't count on him for peripherals or anything. He's just not that type of player. But the improvements there at least will help him earn trust to really maximize the chance of good offensive deployment, right? Tack on a sneakily improving shooting game that, is nothing too crazy, but, it helps him utilize his threat as a shooter to elevate his passing even more, right? To pull kind of defensive schemes out of position to open up lanes. And he should at least provide some good depth in value points leagues, right? And we look at his offensive puck movement profile here, all metrics, like whether that's efficiency, improving the flow of their team's offense, and even influence a little bit. He's a very highly frequent passer that does a lot of things well within his team systems. And as a Marner replacement, in terms of value, that's kind of the best you could go out there without giving up too much, I think. So I'm very interested. At the worst, I don't know if I'll end up drafting him or not. Actually, I know I won't, because I don't pick any players on teams that I don't want to root for.
Right.
But
okay.
If somebody else does, I'd think that'd be a pretty good pick.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I got to get in the league with you, buddy. All right. That's then I can just eat. I can get all the Leafs. I want all the Canadians, just all for me. I think this is going to be an interesting season for Matthews too, without Marner. We've looked at some with or without you stuff for Matthews and Marner, and it looks fine for Austin Matthews without Marner. Like his scoring chances actually went up. His shots on goal are down a little bit, but something I'm watching for sure is the Matthews and Nyes sort of connection, because it seemed like last year we saw less goals for Austin Matthews. We saw Matthew Nyes kind of start cooking up there, and it felt like it needs to reverse. It needs to be like Austin Matthews is the guy at the end of passes, not Nyes. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't know. I'm wondering just how Michelli's going to fit into that situation as this kind of elite playmaker that you mentioned. Do you have any thoughts on Austin Matthews? Even put you on the spot here, but sort of what you think he might be able to do this upcoming season here? Do you think that like 60 goals is back in the bag without Marner, or what are your thoughts there?
I think 60, well, it's possible. Listen, like there's a lot of last year. I think the goal dip was a lot due to like playing injured. And I know I'm going to relate it to the Sens because of course I am, but we saw how much that impacted Tim Stützle in 2023-24. Dude injured his wrist 5 games into the season and played through it the entire year.
Yeah.
And he went from being a guy that was literally 1 post in game 82 shy of hitting 40 goals to, I don't know, getting like 20 or something. Yeah. It cut it big time. And even then, the year after, when he was fully healthy, you could tell that playing a full season with an injured wrist, it completely messes with your calibration as an offensive player, right? You get to the point where you're not shooting when you should be because you've taken so much time to pass. And as a result, the opposing team kind of learns that and starts realizing that if all you're going to do is pass, it's way easier to cover you. And then you get forced into situations where your decision making on the spot is nowhere where it's going, like where it should be, because you're doubting your own skills. And that just deconstructs the entirety of your offensive game, and you're losing layers upon layers of deception there. I do think for Matthews, he's a guy that can get back to that level way faster and can get to that 50 goal mark, potentially even 60. You know, we'll see how that works out without Marner. I do think the Leafs could end up being a wild card team this year, but that's a lot of that is dependent on the jump back from Matthews for sure. And I'll be keeping an eye on it. Unfortunately, that's whether I want to or not, because media, Leafs stuff. Anyway, that's just how it is.
There you go. Well, yeah, shout out to Timmy Stutz. I'm a Timmy Stutz truther as well. My partner Nate, he's not having it. He's not a big fan of Timmy Stutz, but I just love the player. And I agree with you. Like, you need your wrist to shoot. Okay. So yeah. If it's injured, it's like you're obviously.
It doesn't just make your shooting power go down. It does so much more to your offensive game than you could even imagine.
Yep. Absolutely agree. It's always a player I'm interested in, Timmy Stutz. Definitely picking Austin Matthews over him though, but that's fine. I get Stutz in the 2nd or 3rd round. That sounds nice to me. 3rd round.
There you go.
Let's not go crazy. All right, buddy. That's it. We did it. We finished the series, man. I really appreciate you making time for this. This just adds so much value to this series for our listeners and me as well. Like, I've got my own analysis, but then when I'm kind of hearing you dig in a little bit more, it just kind of gets me juiced on some of these players. So you're doing some great work over there, my man. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about LB-Hockey, what we can expect from you throughout the season here, and then give us your socials so people know where to find you.
Yeah, so all of the dashboards and all the tools, all the visits that you've seen throughout the episode are from my website, LB Hockey. So that's lb-hockey.com. And we host a bunch of different dashboards that are whether you want to evaluate a player's progression over the years or compare any two guys. There's some free tools on there, but most of it is pay to access for a cheap little $6.99 US per month. You can get access to all of that. And, I've just finished a bunch of summer coding stuff, so happy to get back into the swing of things on our socials at lb-hockey.com on Blue Sky, and or just my personal at Louis Boulet, LOUISBOULET.bsky.social. Mostly posting over there, but I'm cross-posting on Twitter and Instagram as well. You can find it by searching LB Hockey or Louis Boulet there. So we finally got into our preseason posting schedule, which is good. So currently going through top 10 player seasons from the post-COVID era. So all the best seasons from individual players in specific years. And I've got a few more series as well. I'm currently posting at like a three editions a day level thing. So we got plenty coming in. So make sure you get caught up now so you can keep up with all the new posts coming out over the next month before the season gets into it, because we're so hyped for it here at LB Hockey, and I'm glad to hear that everyone else is, and you are too, Blake.
You bet, buddy. I look forward to every post, every article, and all the new tools that you're releasing. So this is great stuff and absolutely worth the value there. You got a lifetime member here, my man. Really appreciate that. So sweet. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, Louis. And thank you, listeners, for checking us out. That's all we've got for this episode here. Hopefully it brought you some value, helped you get just a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard came from lb-hockey.com. Oh, hell yeah. Natural stat trick. All 3 zones, advancedhockeystats.com. Many thanks to my brother for supplying the music for the podcast. Really appreciate that. And that's it, folks. Celebrate your day. Bye for now.